like a lot of people, I go to junk food when I feel stressed out. Once you're not working out, it's easy to be intimidated to start working out again. I never feel like I have enough time to do anything, to be the mom that I should be, to be the pastor I should be, to be the wife that I should be. And any time that I get away from eating clean and checking in with my body and being aligned, I realize that I'm also further away than I'd like to be from really listening to God.
How do you stay healthy? Do you exercise, eat well, sleep, pray? Sleeping. That's my favorite. Well, Heidi Johnson, who's pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Quincy, Massachusetts, she wants us to look at the whole picture, but in particular, eating well. So in this conversation, we talk about what does that mean? What is healthy eating? And how is it woven into our faith? It's a great conversation with a person who takes seriously the whole piece of what we put in our bodies. So I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. You're going to learn a lot. Welcome to this episode of the Bishop on a Bike podcast. I am Jim Hazelwood. I'm your host for these conversations. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this podcast series. If you get a chance and you're interested and you'd like to go to iTunes and give us a rating, we'd appreciate it. But mostly, I want you to sit back and enjoy this conversation with Heidi Johnson.
So I was a musical theater major in my undergrad, and throughout my 4 years of college, but especially near the end, in my senior year when you're supposed to be graduating, feeling like ready and prepared to go out into the world, I was having major vocal problems. I graduated on pretty shaky ground, moved to New York City with these grand plans that I was going to be a star on Broadway, but I could barely speak. I sounded like I smoked several packs of cigarettes a day and never smoked. Had been diagnosed with nodes, the beginning of nodes, and a cyst in my vocal cords. Over the next couple of years out of college, while kind of stumbling along in New York City, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life, I realized that one of the things that was really important to me was singing. I really missed being able to sing, even if it was just in the shower. So I started going to see some doctors and ended up with a vocal therapist who sent me to Chicago to have vocal surgery.
Oh, wow.
And in that period of time, I was also researching online how to reduce acid reflux because I had been diagnosed with acid reflux, which led me to some sites about raw food eating and the healing that can occur in the body based on what you eat. I was already pretty interested in yoga. So during college, I started doing yoga really for flexibility. I wanted to land a role in Fosse Chicago in my senior year, and so I had to be able to do the splits. So I was already working on that. My paternal grandmother, kind of ahead of her time, was, while a member of a Missouri Synod Lutheran church, teaching yoga at the Y, which I think ruffled a few feathers.
No doubt.
But during my college years, a few times I went for spring break out to Michigan, and she taught me how to stand on my head. She taught me how to do some yoga, and that was a great bonding experience with her. Plus, it was helping me, gain flexibility. And part of my theater training was all about, getting in touch with yourself and accessing these deeper emotions. So I was already interested in that physical fitness. I didn't come into musical theater as a dancer. I came as a singer. So I felt like I really had to prove myself and improve myself when it came to the physical element of the triple threat.
So we can say that you basically got into yoga because of the Missouri Synod.
Absolutely, yes. Thanks to the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church. No, probably in spite of my grandmother, who would go on then to study theology and probably would have been a pastor, if she had been able to be ordained, did some pretty incredible ministry in her life. So she really is a role model for me. And she was a beautiful woman and really into fashion also. So I think all of that together, I thought, oh, well, maybe if I do yoga like Grandma Marge, I'll look like Grandma Marge. And so if you kind of follow that, so I was already into that in college and was having these vocal problems. So out of college, I started seeking some healthier lifestyle choices, which included leaving behind some of the young adult New York City behaviors of going out all hours and drinking excessive alcohol. And then I really stumbled upon, and not long after that, felt that it was the direction of the Holy Spirit that said, you need to eat this way. You have to start taking care of your body in a really extreme way to kind of counteract some of the college and young adult behavior. Overnight, I just decided,
wow, so you went all in.
I'm going to try this.
You went all in.
Yeah, and I'm kind of a 100% kind of person.
Okay.
So I'm just going to try this. I actually remember, it's also interwoven for me. I had this incredible call experience and then got in touch with Jeff Goodrich, who was interning at Advent Lutheran Church in New York City. And I said,
Jeff Goodrich is a pastor in our synod.
Right. Yeah. I said, Jeff, I think I'm called to go to seminary. Can we have lunch? And at that lunch, I ordered salad with shrimp on it. And I said, I think this might be the last time that I'm going to eat animal product. I'm going to try this diet. So right at the same time that I was experiencing this call to ministry, the Holy Spirit was working on me in a multitude of ways. So I ended up, the next day becoming a raw foodist. And for about a year and a half, 2 years, I was strictly a raw foodist. And that marked the beginning of my seminary time. So as I was beginning my time of study, I was eating only raw fruits and vegetables, only nuts and seeds, and I experienced within a matter of months the healing of my voice.
Really? That quickly?
So I ate raw and was also on vocal rest and was under the care of a pretty intense vocal therapist who sent me to this vocal surgeon in the Chicago area. So I went for surgery, and I went the day before my surgery to have a consultation with the doctor. And he put a scope down. Previously, when my vocal cords had been scoped, my throat was, what the vocal therapist said, very angry. It was red and swollen, and I had this huge cyst that she thought had probably been there for a long time and got agitated, and then that caused the nodes to start forming. So my vocal cords did not vibrate the way they're supposed to vibrate. They weren't meeting all the way together. When I went for the surgery consultation, they swung the screen around so I could see it, and I started crying. And the doctor was like, what's wrong? And actually my Grandma Marge was there with me and my dad. I said, those are not my vocal cords. Mm-hmm. First of all, they're the wrong color. They're this like light pink color, and the cyst is gone. It's not there anymore. And the nodes were diminishing. So there was a long, I'm still on the road to vocal health. I still make choices carefully about how I use my voice. But that for me was such a huge moment, an affirmation of some of the healthy choices that I had been making, but also an affirmation of faith, because I felt very strongly that God had put me on the path to treat my body with great respect because it was a vessel to do ministry. So I needed to be able to speak. So that's a motivate. When people say, well, how do you not eat meat? First of all, I never was really a big meat eater. I mean, I loved a burger and beer and fries, but
Right. Who doesn't like fried food? I mean,
Right. And I still,
yeah.
right. So I ate raw for a couple of years and then became a vegan.
Tell me, what is raw? What does that
Yeah.
mean? Is like you're just eating almonds all the time?
Right.
What does that mean? And celery?
It's really, the eating plan that I was on was really focused on eating whole plant food that were not cooked or altered. And since then, different research has emerged to say, there's nothing wrong with eating cooked food. Definitely there's great value in eating raw fruits and vegetables. But I was only putting food in my body that had like optimal health content.
And so the reason one eats raw, like whatever, vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, in their natural state is because that's where they have the most number of nutrients and vitamins and so forth. Is that the idea behind it?
That was the idea. And again, I'm not a scientist, so I had a friend in the corporate world before I went to seminary who was a raw foodist. So when this stuff started popping up when I was searching how to get rid of acid reflux and it's saying don't drink milk, and I'm thinking, but milk, it does a body good. Like I've been enculturated to think that you have to drink milk, and I never liked milk. So that was like a really easy, really, I can stop drinking milk. So I went to this friend and I said, you have to tell me everything you know about raw food. So, a lot of the things that we were reading were written by people who weren't necessarily scientists or doctors. Some of them were. So some of the science says, first of all, you want to be eating a variety of foods largely in their natural state, foods that are high in vitamins and minerals. And sometimes cooking a food brings out certain attributes that you don't get when it's raw. So there's a lot of argument now, which is part of the reason why I'm a vegan now who eats raw and cooked foods.
The vegan doctor is calling.
Yeah. But I also have never felt better than when I was a raw foodist. I'm a mom now with a full-time job. I'm not a student living by myself who spends all her spare time prepping raw food.
So you've got your oldest, Oliver, is now at the age where he's seeing what other kids eat, and so you're having to wrestle with that. I want to talk about that in a second. But just to kind of, so I understand the raw food, and so now you've moved to being a vegan. What's a vegan? What's the difference between vegan and vegetarian? And
so what we do in our house is eat no animal product at all, except honey sometimes. We eat no animal product at all. So vegetarians might eat eggs, they might eat cheese or dairy. We do not eat any dairy, we do not eat any meat.
Okay, so that's the difference between like vegan and vegetarian.
Right.
A vegetarian doesn't eat meat,
right,
but may eat eggs or cheese and some of those things. Okay.
So we don't eat any fish. But we also, you can be a vegan and live on French fries and potato chips. So we also want to be healthy. So we are, we eat junk food, we eat French fries when we go out, but really the goal is to be eating a whole foods, plant-based diet. And that doesn't mean we only shop at Whole Foods. It means that you're eating a food as close to its natural state as you can. So I spend a lot of time chopping vegetables, and we eat a lot of whole grains. It's also great in my marriage and in my family, we're both committed to it. So it's this way that we bond. It's important to both of us. It's the way we've committed to raise our children. And the ethical piece is also important to us.
Okay.
So
say more about that. What's the ethical piece?
The ethical piece would be when my son asks me, so some people eat cows, but we don't because we don't want to hurt the cows, right, Mommy? And I say, that's right. We care about the cows and the pigs and all the other animals, the horses that are used for glue, that, it's interesting having conversations with a child about things like this.
And he's how old?
He's 4.5, because I do think there are some things that maybe could be a little scary to talk about. So we're wanting to be honest with our children about the choices that we've made, but also I don't want him to be up at night having nightmares about the birds that are caged and the turkeys that can't use their wings. But we do try to talk about being compassionate in the way that we live, and that isn't just on Sunday morning at church, but that influences the products that we buy, and largely for us, the food that we eat. But we also talk about how it's it's good for your body. We talk a lot about how it's good for your body. Why do we move? Why do we run? Because it's good for your body to move. It's good for your muscles. And when he says, well, Mommy, I don't want to bring lentil soup anymore in my lunch. Why don't you want to bring, what's going on? Well, Nathan, who's his best friend, said that it looks yucky. So when that finally came out, I said, well, you can tell Nathan that lentils have lots of protein and other vitamins and minerals that are really good for your muscles. And it will make you strong, which apparently is very important to a 4.5-year-old. So the next time lentil soup was on the menu, he said, and I will tell Nathan that it is very good for my muscles. So those are some of the conversations we're having about how it all integrates into our life together.
Yeah, because so his dilemma as a 4.5-year-old is kind of peer pressure and people comment. I would imagine your dilemma is time, and people listening might be going, oh, this sounds great. Yeah, it's ethical. I get that. It's good for me. I get that. They might say, yeah, they like their cheeseburger, the taste of it or something like that. And maybe not everybody's going to go cold turkey like you did,
right.
With Jeff Goodrich as the angelic witness.
Right.
But so I think people want to eat healthier, most people. How do you do it in terms of time?
Mm-hmm. People ask me, isn't it hard? It's hard when you go out to eat. It's hard when you first come to be the pastor at a church and everybody wants to feed you and everything has a meal. And it feels like you're declining hospitality to say, oh, I don't eat that. So sometimes I'm a little self-deprecating. Oh, I know I'm a little high maintenance when it comes to food, but also, trying to share why it's important to me over time in relationship. But at home, there are a few things that we do to make it manageable. Because, first of all, if you are a person that cooks, I know some people don't really cook, right? They maybe eat pre-packaged foods or soup out of a can. Part of it for us is also financial stewardship. To buy no matter what kind of diet you're on, that's very expensive to buy foods that are already pre-made to eat out, which we do, sometimes. It's cheaper to make your own soup. So we're always trying to figure out how it's going to work better. Some of the things that work for us are just to know these are foods that we know work well in our family. We know that this particular lentil soup recipe works well. So sometimes it takes a little more effort. Okay, we need some new recipes in our life. So we're going to look online, try something out. So that takes a little more effort. But if you are willing to commit to something, for us now, we just have certain foods that we keep in the house all the time.
So what are some of those?
Right. So we always have bags of potatoes. We always have brown rice. We always have canned and dry beans. We try to be better about using the dry beans, but canned beans are so awesome. I made bean soup last night, which my boys love, in 10 minutes. And then it cooked on the stove, right? So it was cooking on the stove and I was periodically checking in, but I chopped a carrot, chopped an onion, chopped celery, chopped a zucchini, and I'm a pretty good chopper and we have sharp knives. I will just say, as soon as I became a vegan, I said to my family, I really need good knives. And for Christmas, I had good knives, and I've been using them ever since. Threw that in the pot, strained and dumped the beans in. Wesley, who's 21 months, is helping me rinse the beans and dump them in. And then you start to learn. I've learned so much about spices. If you want to have chili, if you want to have something that's Mexican, what kind of spices go into that? You're not using a prepackaged thing. So you know that you use chili powder and you use cumin and I know that I like oregano and rosemary in a soup. So there's a learning curve anytime you do something new. Like
Smoothies.
Yeah. We always have smoothie in the morning.
Which
and
is
oatmeal.
so easy. And some people
easy.
say, you need to buy a juicer. I just have a regular blender. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
You just chop up the apple a little smaller and it works.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really easy and fun way because you can experiment and you can. I've never made a smoothie that didn't work.
Right.
Some of them were a little bit,
right.
But especially fruit smoothies are really easy.
Yeah. And, we are committed as a family to this lifestyle. So then our blender came from my parents, but that's because, for Christmas, they're like, well, I guess she's really doing this. Let's get her a good blender. Right. It was a great gift for me. And we have smoothie every morning. Even now, Oliver is kind of a picky eater, like a lot of 4.5-year-olds, but for a good 3.5 years, he lived on green smoothie. So I knew if he wasn't eating anything else, he was getting spinach multiple times a day, along with, frozen fruits and banana and almond milk or some kind of non-dairy milk. And the same thing with Wesley now, who's 21 months. He's eating that smoothie, and it's their comfort food. It's kind of how I weaned them, actually, was we weaned them right onto the green smoothie packet. That works out really well for us. And oatmeal, every morning, the boys have oatmeal. So, sometimes when I go and visit other families in the neighborhood, we go over for a play date, and I think, how is their kitchen so clean? Or, and I think, well, it's a commitment that we've made, that we cook 3 meals a day, or we're preparing all of our meals, and I'm sending the boys with stuff in their lunches that I've made.
So for you, and you said you used the word lifestyle choice, just talk a little bit about how this connects with your faith. I mean, lifestyle choice, countercultural, how do you put all that together, kind of? How do you think about that?
Back a little bit to what I was talking about with the ethics of it. For me, it began with this call story, which came at the same time where I was seeking vocal health. It wasn't, as I look back over this time period in my life, I feel that very strongly that the Spirit pushed me to get some head clarity, which required lifestyle change, so that I could hear the call to go into ministry. I was in church, finally having some head clarity and able to sit in church and ask God, what do you want me to do professionally? I'm on this path probably to be a little more vocally healthy, and that's really exciting, but what am I doing in my professional life? I had this training to be a musical theater person. I'm working in the corporate world, which is not a good fit for me personally. What's the deal? And in that moment, I had this incredible experience where my vision became blurry, my ears were ringing. I thought there had been an earthquake because my whole body felt that it was shaking. And when my vision cleared a little bit, all that I could see was the pastor up front who was preaching. I feel badly that I obviously tuned out of the preaching to have this incredible spirit moment. But there was this one clear voice in my head, which I believe to be God, that said, that's what you're supposed to do. What that pastor up there is doing, that's what you're supposed to do. I've never had anything like that happen since or before. I remember looking around thinking, surely somebody else felt that, because that was so intense. The earth moved, and everybody else is getting out the hymnal to sing the hymn of the day, no big deal. I ran out of church as soon as it was over, called my brother, who's younger but wiser, and said, so I just had this really bizarre experience. I think I'm being called into the ministry, but I'm not like our dad. I feel like he was pretty straight and narrow. I've been a part of this pretty colorful community in the theater world, and I don't know if I can do this. And he said, well, maybe all of that is going to make you a great pastor. And the next day, I was researching what I need to do to get into seminary, and at the same time on this path to have vocal surgery, and was eating differently. So it all collided for me. I really do feel like I needed to have clarity in order to hear the Spirit. And then periodically throughout my life, going through seminary, going through the call process, getting married, now being a pastor, being a wife, being a mother, being a person also, periodically, just like we have one baptism, many confirmations, I feel like I have to go back to stand on your head, hang upside down, go to a yoga class, stop eating chips and get the juicer out and have some carrot juice, eat clean, because for me, like a lot of people, I go to junk food when I feel stressed out. Once you're not working out, it's easy to be intimidated to start working out again. I never feel like I have enough time to do anything. to be the mom that I should be, to be the pastor I should be, to be the wife that I should be. And any time that I get away from eating clean and checking in with my body and being aligned, I realize that I'm also further away than I'd like to be from really listening to God. For me in my life, to be aligned physically and in nutrition is to be aligned with where God is calling me. Earlier, I talked about the ethical piece about caring for creation. That's also a huge piece of it. But for me, spiritually, to be aligned includes not just a devotional life, but to include my body and my eating as a part of that. These are things I'm really passionate about. And I will say that it's kind of hard for me sometimes as a pastor because I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not called to be people's nutritionist. But I am called to people's bedsides a lot where they're suffering from heart disease and diabetes and a whole range of illnesses that in my education and research are largely caused by our excessive lifestyle in the United States of eating horribly and not being active. And I know that it is hard and it's countercultural, but it's a great sadness to me to see people deprived of what I see as part of the fullness of life that God desires for us. God gave us these amazing bodies that, do all these incredible things and have these systems that communicate, but they can't communicate. Our systems can't communicate when they're being interfered with by all this junk that we take in.
So it's hard as a pastor. And whether that's bedside or just interacting with people in the congregation, you want to say to them, if you would just do X, right. Y, Z, but that's not the way
that's
life
not
works.
My role in their lives. They have nutritionists, they have doctors, which I would like to, have a word with sometimes, but that's not my call. So part of my call is to lead by example. So for our annual meeting on Sunday, we're having rice bowls. Build your own rice bowls, which actually we had when you came to visit us.
Yep, that was delightful.
And, there will be meat, and people are very gracious. They kind of bashfully say, well, Pastor, we will have some meat for people who want it. But it's markedly improved from what we used to be eating. Meatball subs is what they used to have. So,
or just the plethora of cakes and cookies that usually make up most coffee hours,
right.
And starchy carb stuff, it's just like, I experience this when I go to different churches,
right.
And,
Right, and we're extending hospitality by saying, here, eat food that's going to be brain drain,
right. Right.
And I feel like if I want people to have energy outside of all the other things that they're doing, they need to be healthy. So we can at least model that somewhat. And if that means the only way it's going to happen is because I eat the way I do, and so people are like, oh, well, we should probably have something for Pastor. And so they make sure there are grapes and cucumbers and hummus. Great. At least that's something,
Yeah. Good. Thanks for talking about this.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.